Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Podcast 24. I lied. We've got some problems that have happened with our noble friends, the brain cell. We are not going to go into details. It's a very personal matter. We love them for the sake of God, Allah. They're good friends. They fed us, they housed us, they treated us very, very well. Those podcasts are coming, but for personal reasons, they might be a bit longer. As I said, I lied. So here we are at podcast 24 today. We are probably going to wrap up podcast 25, and the specials might come in till next week, next season, which, alhamdulillah, it is what it is. As always, I'm John, Sean, or Yahya. This is
Chris.
And we are your voice, your nation. This is the Blue Collar Workers. Going to crack on. Going to get started because we've got a lot to get on with today. Winter fuel payments U-turn in plain sight of this year, says the Chancellor. That's a bit of wishy-washiness for a woman who's noted as not being able to count. Let's be quite fair about that. I'm a bit on the brutal side. The Sellafield nuclear reactor plant could be leaking until 2050. The MPs warned us, with some of these leaks being as large as Olympic leakage are as big as Olympic swimming pools. Yeah, that's how much radiated water is being dropped. On the eve of the peace talks in Istanbul, I can't stop laughing, the Ukrainians launched an audacious drone attack deep within Russian operations Spiderweb. Now this is juicy stuff. I've got to talk about this because we have quite a few Russian listeners. I've got Putin will seek revenge for the Ukrainian drone attacks, warns Trump. And then over on Chris's side, we have...
I've got Rachel Reeves' cancer tax raid alert. That could be a potential going forward. The new COVID strain that's about concerns doctors, and they're asking whether it would be worth putting face masks in place when going back to the doctor. Watchdog rebunked NHS over transgender tribunal requests. House Lords push back for amendments to the new AI bill because it involves copyright. And is the UK able to handle a disease outbreak on our food industry?
I think we'll lead with that because we're going to. Yeah. I can go into the winter fuel allowance that will come towards that. So that's quite terrifying. So let's fucking disease capacity for our food.
UK at high risk of £1 billion major outbreak, but government unprepared with no strategy. I think that answers it straight within the title. Yeah.
But then, to be fair, I wouldn't be surprised if the lack of strategies isn't necessarily this government's fault.
Yeah.
Remember how young this government is. So this strategy planning point of view, that when we're dealing with pandemics, diseases, they tend to be multi-governmental needs. So it's unfair to immediately blame. Like, we blame Stemmer for a lot of things. We do. We're not shy about blaming him. But to blame his current government, as I think this article is probably about to lean into, is unfair because pandemic responses, these crisis responses...
It doesn't actually lead into that, his government. It's just in government in general.
Yeah. Governments in general. To be fair, the Tories were fucking incompetent. We all know that. We had 14 years of them. Carry on, mate.
The government is unprepared for a major animal disease outbreak. The UK's spending watchdog has warned. Bird flu, blue tongue and African swine fever are on the rise, posing a growing threat to human health, wildlife, food security and England's farming industry.
Jesus.
According to a stark report from the National Audit Office, the NAO, the report warns that a large scale of outbreak could cost the UK billions of pounds comparing this to the 2001 foot and mouth crisis, which would amount to £13.8 billion in today's money. Yeah.
That's beyond the sting. And I mean, yes, the Labour need to build a strategy in how they would deal with this. But as I previously said, strategies involving industrial collapses because of things like diseases, foot and mouth was an example. No one was prepared. Now we learn lessons from them.
I say in the 2001 rampage of the highly infectious virus resulted in slaughter of millions of UK animals, wrecked farms and slammed the door shut on countryside leisure and tourism. In April, following a foot and mouth disease scare in Europe, the government imposed a blanket ban on personal meat and dairy imports from all EU countries. Since 2020, bird flu outbreaks have forced the culling of 7.2 million birds, with boffins warning of its pandemic potential and escalating threat. Despite Delta and Alpha's scramble to contain recent outbreaks, the NAO has voiced concerns over their capacity to handle more severe or simultaneous serious outbreaks. The report has dropped a bombshell relieving that our livestock's ability to fend off diseases is getting weaker due to the more frequent outbreaks, and there is no game plan for the long haul. Gareth Davis, the head of the NAO, said DAFA has assessed that the risk of an outbreak to which it could be unable to respond effectively is above the level it is considered tolerable, but it is not determined a way to reduce the risk. I
think that's an important factor. This is a governmental organisation, multi-generational, that's been around since foot and mouth. That's like 20 years nearly. That's more than 20 years.
More than 20 years, yeah.
And they don't have a response. So that comes to an organisation level failure more than a government level failure. This organisation's job is to predict, maintain and hold together, which tells me these bureaucrats aren't doing their fucking job. Why are we paying them?
A long-term strategy and action plan are urgently needed to protect national economic resilience as well as food security, human health and rural communities. The report targeted DAFA for recognising a very high risk of an outbreak but admitting it wouldn't be able to handle it properly. It slammed the department for not having a forward-thinking strategy or action plan to beef up resilience against animal diseases.
Just what I said, mate. Yeah. Just literally what I said. It's clearly that the article's talking very clearly that the department, which has been around for 20 fucking years, has not made any effort to forward think its strategies involving dealing with these problems.
This is one thing that's quite concerning. The report revealed a measly 5% of live animal imports are getting the once over, despite aims for full-on checks at border, leaving us with an open to exotic disease hitching a ride from overseas. He slammed the government, saying government's failure to carry out checks on animal imports is also threatening biosecurity at the border.
Actually, this goes further than that. We do not have, and I'm a liberal saying this, we do not have adequate border facilities, whether it's for checking animals, whether it's checking contraband, whether it's checking drug problems. The entire border apparatus needs massive investment and access. And this is where I keep telling you, that our viewers, and me and Chris continue to agree, the tax system has to be reformed so massive problems like that can be resolved. That's going to need, that whole department, the border whole security system needs 3 to 5 billion. 3 to 5 billion in updates. You haven't got 3 to 5 billion to extra cash because the tax system doesn't work for you to fix these problems. Remember, corporations do not care until they're forced to care, and then when they're forced to care, then they react throwing money at all problems. This is why COVID. This is one very telling thing about COVID. Did you notice how quick COVID was cured?
Yeah, because of the fact that money come from nowhere.
No. The reason the COVID goes, look at the age bracket it massively affected.
It's the elderly.
No, not just elderly. 55 plus. How many directors in the country are under 55?
Probably hardly any.
Less than 12%. So the director population, the population that are directors of the United Kingdom, all, and around the world as well, this is a statistic across Europe and everything else, the money to fix COVID came like a train. Now that tells you there is the money physically exists. The pharmaceutical money came out of nowhere to fix COVID because the biggest people who it was going to affect was the older generation.
Was the people in charge.
Was in the people in charge.
Yeah.
And the people in charge found out money like lickety-split. This is affecting everybody on the lower end of the scale. So of course they're not putting so much effort into it. This is why the tax system forcefully has to be changed. And it's a brilliant article because it is a problem. The whole border apparatus, this isn't just for those pro-nationalists who think, oh, we need more border guards. We don't. We need a whole overhaul of the border system, which allows us to inject billions into the system. We probably need between 3 to 5, I think. And that will give us a good assessment of what we need to fix. New boats, new cutters, new boats, more inspectors, food inspectors at the border.
The fact that not every single piece of food is being checked or literally given the rubber stamp to make sure all their documentation's in line before it even comes through is disgusting.
Absolutely. 20 years ago, that would have been criminal. And we had Europe's aid to sort us out for that. So remember, Britain, this is one of those fantastic deals of Brexit. You can't live without your food, okay? More than 60% of your food comes from the outside of Britain. You can't feed Britain, the 17 million Britons, on British product. I wish we could, we can't. because I genuinely do believe in supporting the farming community. We're from that area. That's not a nationalistical point of view. That's us having an argument that we want to support our local farming communities. But the argument that more than 60% of our food comes in, you will starve if you want to cut that off. Oh, close all the borders. You can't.
If there was to drop the greenback and literally go into mass farmland so we sustained ourselves,
we could.
Would there be enough land to do that?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I was talking about that point when we were up at Blackburn. I was doing the research on my phone. The 4 to 6% increase in farmland would feed the entire island.
Damn.
4 to 6. Remember, 100% of the island we only use about 8%. If we took when me and you said to you that double the percentage of what we use as Britons, yeah. If we allocate 4 to 6% of that, so we go from 8 to 16.
Yeah.
So that's 8%. So 4% goes into housing, munitions, and everything else. The other 4% we put into farming, we would cover almost all our entire food bills, and we're only using 16% of the island.
I would up it to 20, so we have plenty of bloody housing, I know.
Again, I've always argued that you need more. Britain does not use enough of its land. We physically don't. We need to stop being Europe's sinkhole. We need to suspend the green belt, and I've said this multiple times, and I know it's controversial for a Liberal to do this, but we need to do it because we are living in the housings that were built in the 1950s for us to live in housings that are designed for 50 million. There's 70 million of us. You wave a magic wand, you're still 6 million white Britons. I tell you this ethno-nationalist for a reason. You wave a Harry Potter fucking wand, and you get rid of all the migrants, you've still got 6 million white Britons that aren't housed, don't have homes.
That's crazy.
Yeah, of course it is.
The fact that even if you used to increase from 8 to say 20% of the land used for our own, so we could sustain our own living, that would probably take us to the, like literally where we are now, like Gloucester, Devon.
Unquestionably, if we increased our land usage to 20%, we would be able. You could engineer which cities you wanted to increase.
The entire southwest would be entirely populated. The rest would be free.
Yeah.
If you used to squish it all into a corner.
But you wouldn't need to. Yeah, I mean that's for what you do is you suspend the green belt. You build a 10 or 15% increase in every village, every town in the UK. You bring in. You get all these apparently illegal migrants, and you give them an option. You say you can earn your citizenship. Leave the gangs, you will earn your citizenship, you will do a 10-year programme, you will build houses, schools, roads for us. At the end of that, you get your fucking citizenship.
And you get a house.
You get a house with it. Chris is even more generous than I am.
No, there's stuff to pay for the house, but...
Man, no, the money. No. You can buy the house. We might even make it cheap for you, but you still got to buy it.
You might get a discount, but it won't be much.
But do you understand what I'm saying? The idea that these problems cannot be solved is because no one on the right, not even the fucking Labour Party, want to discuss on how you would resolve illegal migrants to the benefit of our country. And that's how you benefit it. You say to them, come to us, be documented, and then from your documentation, you will have a pathway towards becoming a British citizen by the sweat of your labour.
Either through construction,
engineering,
healthcare,
yeah. That is how you solve those problems. I think it's brilliant. We're going to move on to winter fuel payments for a U-turn placed this year, says the Chancellor. Changes to the winter fuel payments to allow more people to receive it will be in place this year, the Chancellor has said, Rachel Reeves, before the winter fuel allowance is necessary. I personally have doubts about this woman. I've always, she's always U-turning, coming up short. She's always has... She can't stick to her guns.
In order for her to have that U-turn thing, she needs to literally have 99.9% of it done by the end of August.
Yeah. And I don't.
So that gives her 3 months.
Prime Minister Sturgeon has said he wanted the window to widen the threshold for winter payment in a U-turn on one of the government's first major policies, but failed to confirm on Wednesday how many would now get it. The payments worth up to £300 to help with energy bills during the coldest months was paid only to those on pension credit last year. But the policy was widely blamed for Labour's poor local election results. It means 10 million fewer pensioners received the money in 2024. There was particularly concerns among charities and some MPs about those whose income was slightly too high to qualify, but were hit by the loss of the payment as energy costs remain expensive. So Kerr did not confirm during the Prime Minister's questions who would be eligible for the reviewed policy, having previously admitted in a recent BBC interview that clarity was needed as soon as possible. Clarity is one of the current Labour government's biggest problems. Their lack of clarity is my most grievous wound with them. Like I said, their foreign policy abilities, their abilities to bring in trade, brilliant. I'm not here discussing with, from a domestic point of view, lack of clarity, lack of overall input of social capacity is our problem. And I mean, what do you think? I don't think they're going to get it done. I think there's going to be a lot of tears and pain.
But literally, the time frame they got to get that done is literally under 3 months now, because we're already in June. They got to get it done. They got to have most of the work done by the time August comes around, because it's September. That's when the wet and the cold weather starts slowly coming in. So you need to have it in place by then. And most analysts and plans or anything else that usually say to do that sort of U-turn would take a minimum of 6 months. So you'd be lucky if it's even done by January.
I think the Prime Minister's going to have to scramble if he thinks he's going to pull this off. I think
it's going to have to be their only focus, internally anyway, if they want to get that done by the time winter comes along.
Yeah, because there's a lot of people they're going to have to cover. The means testing system will have to be...
So they'll have to get all hands on deck, and then none this, submit your form, and then 12 weeks later you get your reply. That's already breached the 3 month mark.
Yeah, exactly. As the Prime Minister said, we will look again, as I said 2 weeks ago, the eligibility for winter fuel, and of course we'll set out how we pay for it. When quizzed to the Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch, that woman couldn't lead away on a paper bag, on how many of the 10 million pensioners who lost their allowance would be get back, the question came after Reeves said earlier that people should be in no doubt that the means test will increase and more people will be getting winter fuel payments this winter. One of the problems I have with Kemi Badenoch is her own previous, Rishi Sunak's government was considering cutting the winter fuel allowance. So this isn't a non-conservative view. So this is a hot button topic because of how badly the winter fuel. The Labour did the cut, even though the Tories were considering it. They were considering it during the Rishi Sunak government.
Why were they considering it for?
For financial reasons. It's a lot of money, Chris.
Don't give a shit, you look after the elderly.
Yeah, of course, no. From a social point of view, absolutely, me and you agree on that. But you've got to understand that it's an economical reason. They're strapped for cash. And you cannot solve most of our modern British problems under the current fucking tax system. And I know I bang on about this because it is such a critical point.
Yeah, episode 24, we're still going on about it.
Yeah. But I mean, it'll be episode fucking 124 unless
the moment they start doing something, we'll be throwing a party.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think when you fix the tax system, when you restructure the tax system, when you wipe out all of the tax exempts for many of the massive companies that benefit from this island, you will have the money to fix all of these what they are, relatively speaking, small problems. These are 10 million people. There's 1 in 7 Britons. That's a sizable population, but it's a small problem in the grand scheme of things of the British Isles. And that is something we need to be more telling of.
A small problem that can help a load of people.
In response to the growing question over the changes, Downing Street said it would provide clarity on how it would expand payments as soon as it can. Caroline Abbott's charity director at Age UK said, "We are encouraged by the Chancellor's words, but we will wait to see the details, which need to be published very soon if changes are to be made for this winter by August," as Chris just said. As I'm reading the article, this article's from the BBC, as I feel we need to start actually saying when we get our articles from. I personally think that Rachel Reeves is capable of fixing this. I don't know if her focus will be given to it. And as you said, they're going to have to put all hands on decks. Yeah. Talking about Rachel Reeves, you're looking at...
I was going to say, let's tie into the next one. Rachel Reeves, council tax raid alert. This is from the Daily Express. Yeah.
Pinch of salt. Big pinch of salt.
Yeah. Rachel Reeves is facing growing pressure to hike, council tax in some regions and shut down tax breaks after a major international body / Britain's growth forecast. In a stark assessment by the Organisation of Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, downgraded the UK's outlook and called it a raft of tax-raising measures to prop up the Treasury's threadbare finances. These include revealing council tax bans based on current property prices and a move that could hammer millions of homeowners and renters in larger or more expensive homes, particularly in the southeast, in a blunt warning that would leave Reeves little fiscal wiggle room. The OECD said a balanced approach should combine targeted spending cuts, including closing tax loopholes. That is the only thing I agree with this 100%, closing tax loopholes.
The tax loopholes that exist, and we're not talking even to stop thinking about these council tax loopholes. Start thinking about the tax loopholes that exist for the banks. Let's talk about these tax loopholes for a moment, Chris. The biggest tax loopholes we have come from the Roman period, given to our banks. There are tax loopholes that are Roman era old. Tax loopholes for the British banks, the owners of the British banks back then.
And they still got them in place.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Every successful government has had these negotiations with London. They are the ones that need closing. They are the ones that need shutting down.
Revenue rising measures such as re-evaluating council tax bans based upon property values and removal of distortions in the tax system. And this goes on, expanded one, what's wrong with council tax?
Everything's wrong with council tax.
It goes, critics have long described England's council tax system as an outdated, unfair and badly in need of reform. We'll agree on that statement. Publishing through those in modest homes while letting the wealthy off lightly.
The problem is the Express is owned by the wealthy, so there is a reason that they're deflecting here. What are they deflecting on? They know that the government needs to draw cash, and it has to get it from somewhere.
I was going to say, this is where the deflection is going to come along. Based on 1991 prices, the entire system is built on property valuations from over 30 years ago. Back then, an average house price was around 57,000. Today, it's over 280,000. Damn, that is times 5.
Yeah.
Shit.
This is why, as I've said to you before, my dad was able to buy what he did in London at the time he did.
The bans haven't been updated. 8 bans only. Each property in England and Wales fall into one of just 8 bans, A to H. This crude system doesn't reflect the way valuation in house values across the country. Unfair to north, a modest family home in the south east might fall in a low band because of the 1991 values, even though it's now worth close to £1 million. Meanwhile, a similar sized house in the north could be in the same brand or higher, but worth a fraction of the price.
Yeah.
The super rich pay proportionally less. Someone in the multi-million pound mansion might pay just 2 or 3 times the council tax of someone in a tiny terrace, despite the home being worth 10 times as much. No link to income. The tax is based solely on the property, not the people living in it. This means pensioners or low-income families in long-owned homes can face the same bills as a wealthy household. Successfully, governments have dodged reform. Any move to revalue properties in such a politically toxic, no government has dared touch it since the poll tax riots of the 1990s, fearing a voter revolt. The OECD's intervention raises the prospect of stealth tax raid on Middle Britain, hitting families already struggling with mortgage payments, sky-high bills and stagnant wages. The organisation also raised an alarm over the state of the public finances. Nothing currently very thin fiscal buffers could be insufficient to provide adequate support without breaching the fiscal rules in the event of a renewed advised shocks. Despite promising not to raise income tax, national insurance or VAT, the Chancellor may be forced to turn to alternate sources such as council tax to plug the growing holes in the national books.
We'll stop there. She needs to go back on that pledge. She needs to go back on her pledge and actually start fixing these fucking taxes. Like, you can't fix the country if you don't fix the tax system. It's a fundamental reality that we live in. And I think that kind of speaks everything for itself. This problem is going to only aggravate.
I'm going to look into the current council tax system, because the fact that someone up north could be paying the same amount of council tax as someone living in a multi-million-pound house.
I totally believe it's possible, because the way that the tax system is very old.
Yeah.
The whole tax system is older than you, Chris.
To me, the council tax system should be very simple. If you live in a one-bedroom house, you pay a certain amount. 2, certain amount. 3, certain amount. 4, certain amount. 5, certain
mansion,
amount.
you pay a fucking load.
Yeah. Bear in mind, obviously, when you come into obviously 4, 5, well, actually no, it's 5, 6, 7, and 8. You are looking at mansions, and so the council tax should be higher anyway, because of the fact you've got a bigger property.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's the way it should work. Because of the fact, if someone has got a 4 or 5 bedroom house and is paying the same amount as someone that owns or rents a 3 bedroom house up north, what the fuck?
Exactly. No. The north should not be paying anywhere near the level of tax, because much of our industry, much of our resources, much of our heavy movement is in the south. And it is genuinely unfair that the north of our country is deeply disadvantaged.
I honestly think it should be based on how many rooms the house has.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because then that's equal to, because obviously the more rooms you have, the more threads of income you've got coming into the house. Obviously over the age of 18, if there's more than...
And if you can afford a 5-bedroom house, you're a bloody wealthy bloke.
Yeah, I was say, you afford the higher bedroom houses, you could then turn around and afford the bill.
The tax that comes with it.
The bills that come with it.
Absolutely. And I fundamentally think that again, and this comes back, as Chris is talking about the tax rate, this comes back to the tax system absolutely has to be renovated. The whole fucking lot, including the idea that the Roman fucking bankers are getting deals that are 1,000-year old. That needs to close. That needs to be closed now. But no one talks about the banks and how they dodge all forms of tax. And it's morally fucking bankrupt, the British banking system.
The thing the issue I have with this is based on the cost of the house. Because I'm like, the cost of the house depends on where you live.
Yeah.
Why should that come into it?
Yeah, absolutely.
It should be a case of how many bedrooms you have in that
Me
house.
and Chris moved north, we get real cheap houses. Since we're podcasters, we could do this business anywhere. You know what I'm saying? Don't get me wrong, I love Gloucester, and it's very likely that me and him might end up living here, but the problem, as in owning houses, the problem you've got to understand is it's more affordable for people to move north. It really is. It is more affordable to move north.
Extremely affordable.
We were there for a day. And it was beyond the pleasure being there. Blackburn you've got a magnificent town, and I got to give it up to you. Yeah, your food's amazing, the environment's lovely.
This way, I drove down the streets, and I was like, am I in Blackburn or Gloucester?
Yeah, it's a beautiful place. It's a very, very beautiful town.
Bear in mind, that was the higher end of Gloucester, by the way.
Yeah.
Let's get that right, yeah?
You're not talking about Barton Street.
not the lower end of Gloucester, the higher end of Gloucester, all right?
We were not talking about Barton Street, all right? We love you, Barton Street, but you need to pull it up a bit, you know what I'm saying?
But they have been there a long time, so no wonder why it looks a bit dated.
But our trip up for when we did our joint podcast was beautiful, and it was a beautiful environment. There are reasons why we haven't posted it this week or next week. There's personal matters going on, but we won't.
I did like the fact we actually drove past the football stadium.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we didn't go up there for Blackburn football, believe me.
You can tell I'm not gonna lie, you can tell it's a football town.
Oh yeah. It was massively a football town. There's no question about that. You finished with that one, didn't you think? Yeah, fantastic. Sellafield nuclear reactor, largest in the United Kingdom, could be leaking until 2050, MPs have warned. The UK's largest nuclear site could continue leaking radioactive water until 2050. MPs have warned whilst its clean-up operation struggles to progress quickly enough. The Public Accounts Committee, the PAC, criticised the speed of decommissioning work at the Sellafield in Cumbria, citing cost overruns and continual safety concerns in a report published on Wednesday, external. Otherwise, the committee noted that there were signs of improvement. PAC chairman Sir Geoffrey Clifford Brown said Sellafield continues to pursue an intolerable risk. The Nuclear Disarm Decommissioning Authority, the NDA, acknowledged the leak in the Magnox Suffrage storage silo, was its single biggest environmental issue. The MSSS, which the NDA has described as the most hazardous building in the entire United Kingdom, Prime Minister, the most hazardous fucking building in the United Kingdom, maybe you need that said again, has been leaking radioactive water into the ground since 2018.
Fuck's sake.
Releasing enough to fill an Olympic swimming pool every 3 years.
What on earth is that doing to everything around it?
No fucking idea. It is likely to continue leaking until the oldest section of the building has been emptied in 2050, about a decade later than previously expected. Sir Geoffrey said, as with the fight against climate change, the sheer scale of the 100-year-old time frame of the decommissioning project makes it hard to grasp the immediate safety hazards and costs overruns.
When's it been leaking since?
2018.
2018. It dumps Olympic-sized swimming pools worth of radioactive every 3 years. 2018, 2021. So it's already done 3 lots already, and it's going to keep going to 2050.
Yeah.
Yeah. Looking at that's in double digits
of
Olympic-sized swimming pools.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's like a big national lake's worth of radioactive water
in Cumbria, one of our greatest natural preserves. And yet, all you green motherfuckers are moaning at us because we want to shut the grain belt down for about 18 months so we can rebuild our country.
And yet you haven't picked up on this frigging nuclear radiation leak of water.
Every day at Sellafield is a race against time to complete work before buildings reach the end of their lives. Our report continues too many signs that this is a race that Sellafield risks losing, pointing to the fact that Sellafield Limited has missed most of its annual targets for retrieving waste from buildings, including the MSSS. The committee warned the consequences of the underperformance in these buildings are likely to remain extremely hazardous for very long periods. Doesn't give a detail on the time. The spokesperson for the NDA said that the leak in the Magnox Swift storage silo is contained and does not pose a risk at public currently.
Bullshit.
No. These are very strict scientific engineers, Chris. It doesn't represent a risk currently.
I like the way you say currently until next week to go, oh shit, we've got it wrong. It's already at
Regulators
risk.
accept that the current plan to tackle the leak is is the most effective one. So the plan they've got is most effective. What they're suffering from is financial problems. So Geoffrey said it was of vital importance that the government grasped the daily urgency of the work taking place at Sellafield and shared any sense of far-off dates of completion for which no one currently living is responsible. Sellafield risks and challenges are those at present day. So the threat of that water leaking is present day. Now, admittedly, apparently it doesn't leak into the ground. It's still contained, but it is leaking. That level of water should be a fucking deep worry for people. The government, Sellafield ceased generating electricity in 2003, and in addition to work at cleaning up the site, now processing and storage nuclear waste from power plants around the UK. The government plans to create an underground geological disposal facility, GDF, to store nuclear waste for thousands of years it will take to become safe. But the committee said delays in creating the GDF, so the GDF hasn't been built because it costs too much money, which is now expected to be completed until 2050, meant more costs for Sellafield. The NDA chief executive, David Patel, said it would welcome the report, adding it took the findings seriously and the safety of the site and the well-being of our people will always be our highest priority. We are pleased that recognising improvements in developing major projects and that we are safely retrieving waste from all 4 highly hazardous facilities. What we got here is that the government hasn't built the storage facility to get rid of this waste. Because, again, it's money. And I tell you, the only way you can fucking fix these problems, change the fucking tax system! I feel like I'm banging my fucking head against a wall sometimes,
Let
Chris.
me at it, because of the fact my approach to it will shock most people, and that comes in the special when it releases.
The corporate man wants to fear. If he don't make Prime Minister, that's your Iron Chancellor, and he's coming for your fucking corporations. Ring, ring, chainsaw moment. You fucking rich people better run. This man gets into the Chancellor's office. Where do I make my money? I got a million problems to solve, and they're all looking at me to cash them. Your turn, my boy.
Yeah. And since it was big on the thingy, we'll go into health. Doctors, obviously, where was I? There. New COVID strain concerns doctors. Doctors call for a return to face masks after new COVID strain reaches the UK.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
We don't have the patience. We don't have the patience as a country to engage in more COVID restraints. I don't think it'll last. I think there'll be a massive pushback from the country.
Bear in mind, this is a concern, obviously, because of the fact, obviously, it's only just reached it, and every new strain needs its research. And is that now strains? I've lost fucking count already. Doctors have called for a return to face masks as a case of COVID-19 have spiked across various places across the globe, including Hong Kong, China, Australia, India, Thailand and the US. The news comes from a couple as a new strain of COVID-19 has been detected in the UK. In the UK, several people have been diagnosed with the new COVID strain dubbed the NB181, fucking ridiculous, strain according to the Public Health Agency. The NB181 has been officially designated a variant under monitoring by the WHO due to its rapid rise and the potential to evade immunity from previous infections or vaccines.
Just so everyone's aware, WHO is the World Health Organization. A lot of people don't necessarily know.
The ones that developed the
ones that
vaccine.
tell us whether we're in a pandemic or not.
The new COVID variant is already the dominant strain in Hong Kong and China, and also has been detected in Australia, the US, Egypt, Thailand, Maldives, and now the UK.
Jesus.
Yeah, so this is quite a rapid one.
Yeah.
Quite rapid spreading. Many of the symptoms are the same as the previous COVID strains, but also come with more unusual signs which aren't always associated with the virus, such as loss of appetite and diarrhea. The emergence of the new COVID strain comes coupled with the WHO warning rising COVID activity in the 3 global regions. Since mid-February 2025, according to the data available from Sentinel sites, global SARS-CoV-2 activity has been increasing, with the test positivity reaching 11%, levels that have not been observed since July 2024. The WHO has warned in recent reports, who stated that increased activity has been seen in the Western Pacific, Southern East Asia and Eastern Mediterranean regions. Countries in the African region, European region and the region of the Americas are currently reporting low levels of the SARS-CoV-2 activity.
You see, this is alarming, but it's not as alarming as I thought it was. It's only about 11-14%. Remember, Britain really struggled under COVID. COVID fucked us economically, and that was at the same time that we were leaving Brexit. So we got double smacked from that. And if we get smacked by another COVID, if government tries to shut down the country again, it will fall. I think the government will fall. I don't think it could impose new COVID restrictions under the current system.
Right. Obviously, Mumbai, India, have become an epicenter of COVID-19 outbreaks, accounting 510 of the 959 cases reported from across the state between May 20th and June 3rd.
You see, now I'm not. Stop. I know that's alarming for the World Health Organization, but there's only hundreds of cases.
Yeah.
This is handleable. The World Organization of Health Systems can handle this. So for all of our Britons that need boosters, please get the fucking boosters, because it will allow you to be more resistant to these problems.
I'll do, apart from getting the boosters, if you're one that's not into vaccinations, then the only thing I'd say is improve your health.
Yeah, go to the gym, but massively improve your health.
Don't even have to go to the gym to improve your health.
Go on like walks, balanced diets.
Balanced diet. That doesn't mean cut everything out.
Yeah.
It means balanced. It means make sure you get all the food groups in.
Yeah, fruit, veg.
Yeah. Fruit, veg, meat, grains, everything else. Stuff that agrees with you, obviously, because I know some have.
So you have dietary issues, but in essence, make sure you start looking at how your food health comes in. Look and get just even if you do 20 minutes of exercise a day. Don't be like us nutcases.
If you've got a dog,
go for a walk.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Because
I actually emphasise on eating meat.
Yes.
Especially red meats. I know there's people who go, it's bad for you. The amount of nutrients that are in red meat is uncanny.
Yes.
And if not meat,
Eggs, meat, white meat is good as well.
My two key forms of nutrition on my diet.
Chicken's good. Chicken's another excellent, but keep it lean. Don't drip it in garbage. Grill it, steam it, stuff like that. Realistically, concentrate on your health, your personal health. That is never a bad piece of advice that our podcast can give. If you wish to get past many of these pandemics, we have to be more active. Don't even be frightened to go for a couple of walks.
There are some that will say go the supplement route. I would advise against it because of the fact of all the extra crap they stick in those supplements.
Depends on the supplements.
Yeah, I would say always try to do it with diet first, with what you're eating, get your nutrition from your food rather than supplements.
Yeah, absolutely. Supplements should be for if you are naturally deficient in something.
Yeah.
And I think that should probably aim upon itself. But I think this is something to watch, but I don't think it's a critical position. There are only, in India, remember this is India, if there's only hundreds going on in India, that's not that bad in a year period.
As I say, obviously I can understand where they're coming from with masks inside the doctor, because obviously there's already unwell people in there, so that would benefit those that are in the doctor for a certain reason.
We can't go back to national masking and national COVID levels because the country would collapse financially. We got to take into account that there's certain levels of resistance that a nation can take. We've had one COVID thing; it was a disaster to us economically.
I say if they say masking to come back, I would say only within the medical profession. Like if you're going into a hospital, doctors, I would say dentist, but that's mute because of the fact they all dentist.
Wear it anyway.
And literally, but that'd be the standard places. I'll say you need to wear a mask. Anywhere else, pointless. And one thing I'd have to say for the people that wear a mask outside, it's defeating the purpose.
Yeah, completely. But I think that's a pretty good sum ups for that one.
Yeah,
definitely. We call that.
That one. Yeah.
On the eve of peace talks in Istanbul, the Ukrainians launched an audacious drone attack deep within Russia's Operation Spiderweb. To my Ukrainian friends, thank you, because what they've destroyed are the strategic nuclear arsenals of Russia. I don't need to stress this enough. The strategic bombers that are used for both, obviously what they're using right now to use traditional bombs on the Ukrainians, but they are the same bombers that you carry their nukes.
So basically, we just dealt a massive nuclear blow to
Hundreds of Ukrainian-made drones were smuggled over the border, put into crates, and launched simultaneously to blow up billions of dollars worth of Russian military equipment. The Ukrainians penetrated as far into Russia as the North Pole is from London, or Los Angeles is from New York. No small feat. And you can bet that the whole world is watching and taking notes from how the Ukrainians are responding to Russian aggression. This was not a scene from a Hollywood spy movie, but a glimpse of the future of modern warfare. Once again, the battlefield of Ukraine and the technology used there are changing the face of how war are fought and potentially won. Wars won't be fought just with legacy hardware and 20th century capacity, but with swarms of cheap drones alongside. The swarms overhauled like killer bees, and as he described it on the weekend episode, it unnerved and scary. Voldemort. Yeah, I said that, Voldemort. But inside Volodymyr. But the way Ukrainians use their drones has not been done before by any army, and attacks like these will be making Ukrainians' adversaries and allies very nervous. As tensions mount in the Indo-Pacific, both Beijing and Washington will be taking note from Vladimir is the President Zelensky. Basically, they drove them on the backs of Russian delivery trucks as cabins. These cabins then drove up to these Russian sites. They were phoned to make sure that they were there, so they had operators. Remember, all Ukrainians, 90% of Ukraine speaks Russian. So they phoned, the cabin's there. The lid comes off and the drones take off. And then they just attack these bases. These strategic bombers were fucking wrecked everywhere. There's pictures everywhere. If you don't know where they are, look them up, what was destroyed in the Russian bombings. There are pictures of these bombers laying wreckages across the entirety. And these aren't small small bombers. These are the big, massive bombers that have been raining destruction down on Ukraine. But the damage to the Russian bombing squadrons is vast because it affects their strategic bombings, their ability to harm me and you, the ability to harm Britons, the ability to harm France and Germany with nuclear arsenals. It has massively degraded the Russians' nuclear arsenal. And I think that is an important factor. Drone warfare is the face of our future. It's cheaper. The way that you destroy strategic bombers is... What the Ukrainians have done to the Russians, being the smaller power, being the weaker power, even though they're backed by us.
David versus Goliath.
David just smacked Goliath, douche, straight in the fucking kisser. And he has, because there's no way Russia can hide the loss of these strategic assets. They're massive. The world knows where they are. You've seen some of them old 1960s films, haven't you, where they talk about World War III coming up. And those are the bases that were attacked.
Damn.
Yeah, that's deep in fucking Russia.
That's a strategic, that's taking it literally to the next level.
Putin can't save face on that one.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get back to about Putin not saving face after your next piece, my boy.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is one that we was going to cover on the last one, but we ran out of time. NHS Fife rebunk by Watchdog over handling of the transgender row. Tribunal crossed requests. The Scottish Information Commissioner orders the Health Board to issue revised responses after its refusal to say how much it has spent fighting legal action brought by nurse Sandy Peggy over sharing a changing room with a transgender doctor. This lovely topic. I'm not going to lie, it's starting to get boring and ever so frustrating. Ever since the ruling of the Supreme Court, it's like
and to be fair, I think that there's more coming out recently about the Supreme Court. I don't remember the details of it, but the transgender argument is starting to be kicked to the curb. It really is.
NHS Fife failed to comply with its freedom of information duties over the costs of employment tribunal. Scotland's Information Commissioner has ruled. The Health Board received 3 separate requests. In March 2025 for the cost to date of the legal action which is brought by nurse Sandy Peggy after her complaint about sharing a changing room with the transgender medic Dr. Beth Upton led to her suspension. She was suspended from Victoria Hospital in Kirkcaldy in January 2024 after she objected to Dr. Upton using the changing facilities in its A&E department on Christmas Eve. Ms. Peggy took to the House Board and Dr. Upton to the tribunal logging a complaint of sexual harassment and harassment related to protected belief under Section 26 of the Equality Act of 2010. The tribunal has been heard with proceedings set to continue in July. So coming up soon. NHS rejected all 3 freedom of information requests, stating that the information requested has exempt under the FOI Act's exemption, which protects personal information. However, a probe by the Scottish Information Commissioner has revealed that when responding to requests, NHS Fife did not actually have the information on which it based its reply.
I mean, just looking through the independents right now, the Equality Watchdog's threatened with legal action. The Equality Watchdog programme, the organisation that's designed to protect equality, has been threatened with legal action after saying trans women must use men's toilets if they have a male organ. The people who are supposed to watchdog us are being threatened with lawyers. This tells you how fucking out of place this trans conversation has really got. They are a percentage of, and I'm not trying to bash on gays, I'm really not, and the gay community, but they are the trans community is a percentage of us percentage. The gay community represents what, 1.5, 2% of Britain?
Roughly that, and they're a percentage of that.
And they're a percentage of that 2%. We are chasing too far with so many other real problems in the UK. And we need to acknowledge we can't keep... This is really first world problems. The Middle East doesn't have this. Africa doesn't have any of these trans problems because they're too busy fighting for what their people need. And we have forgotten to fight for what our people need. Our tax system is horrific. Our systems of balance are horrific. We need to recenter our attention. And constantly giving oxygen to these trans arguments after the excellent decisions made by the Supreme Court, and I support them, and I don't believe that's transphobic. The trans community need their own spaces, and they need to build their own spaces, and they need to stop trying to steal everyone else's. And I'm sorry, that just needs to fucking be said.
Well, that's literally what they're doing. They're trying to stamp their authority on something which they don't belong in.
Yeah.
There's a reason why there's 2 sex bathrooms, because of the fact that is...
There does need to be a third. I do agree that there does need to be a third. The third needs to be provided.
Like I say, that's where I would say that...
the disabled bathrooms should be allowed for trans community. Yeah.
Because of the fact, obviously, that's the next logical step, because obviously I reckon they're roughly about the same numbers, aren't they? Maybe the disabled just a tiny bit more.
Yeah, the disabled community is a little bit more, but I think that sharing facilities with the disabled whilst it's going on until there is an independent trans community area, I think is absolutely justifiable. I don't think we should be giving...
I can guarantee you most of the people that use those bathrooms, but okay, you need a safe space for you to use the toilet, they would have no issue with it. There might be the odd one which is a bit stuck in their old traditional ways, but I don't see it being a problem. But I'm sorry, the 2 main standard bathrooms stay, and if you're biologically a man or a woman, you use the one accordingly. If you feel unsafe in those, there is an alternative toilet available until you can sort out a way to have your own space to do so, instead of trying to nick something which, I'm sorry, but isn't yours.
See, I fundamentally have a problem with how much oxygen we have been wasting as a nation and the Western society when it comes towards a percentage. We take nothing away from the gay community, but we need to stop focusing on something that's less than 2% of our island and start focusing on the rest of the 98% of the island. I'm really sorry to say it like that, because we have now genuine fucking problems here. We have tax, we have winter fuel problems, we have roadwork failures, we have housing failures. This is taking too much oxygen. It really is. And it's a nasty way of saying it, and it is something that we need to do. I'm not trying to have harm for the trans community. Please don't take that as some kind of bigotry point of view. I just think we give too much oxygen, time and energy to these issues, and the British press needs to stop reporting upon them. Really, they do.
I think the only thing I got to say on this matter is the fact that, okay, you're going through a transition, but you got to understand the fact you're trying to enter a space which has already been deemed safe for the women. Yeah. If you try to enter that space, I'm sorry, but with a dick, you're classified as a dude.
Yeah.
Until then, you then go use the males, or if you're uncomfortable with that, use the disabled.
Yes.
Until then, stop trying to demand a space in which
has been now legally declared women.
Yeah, legally declared for a woman. And the fact that before it was even legally declared, you was allowing a man to go into a female's changing room to change or do whatever is disgusting anyway on any moral level.
I fundamentally, where I have a slight drawback from what Chris is saying, I do believe the trans community need their own independent space. And that can be morphed, if you like, away from take the disabled changing facilities and morph from there onwards. But to give them the female space is wrong. Okay, women's space should be for biological women, male space for biological males. If you're uncomfortable using that, use the disabled facilities. There are disabled facilities almost everywhere in the UK these days.
I think actually that's a law.
It's law. It's legal. It's legally required. Disabled toilets are required for anybody, or disabled access toilets.
Yeah.
So I fundamentally now have a problem with them considering this a necessity that they have a right to enter women's space or enter men's space. You don't. Okay, the Supreme Court of this country has said so. You need to get that very clear. And I think we need to move away from this conversation because, as I said, and I'm not doing this from a malicious point of view, you are not a big enough part of my population for me to consider you important enough to be on the Blue Collar podcast. Respectfully, I just don't. Anyway, back over on the eve of after the eve of the things, Putin will seek revenge from Ukraine's drone attacks, warns Donald Trump. Why is Donald Trump acting as the fucking mouthpiece of the Russian president?
Yeah, why?
Because before I even read this article, why is the military superpower of the planet speaking on behalf of Russia? Vladimir Putin has said he will have to respond to Ukraine's major drone attack on Russian air bases. The US President Donald Trump has warned. Speaking after a phone call with the Russian president, Trump said President Putin did say, and very strongly, that he will have to respond to the recent attacks on the airfields. Trump warned in a social media post that the phone call, which lasted more than an hour, this is a man talking to the Russian president, who is attacking a European country right now for more than an hour. It just tells you where this gives you an idea of America's view of world politics these days, especially under the Trump administration. The two leaders also discussed Iran, with Trump saying Putin suggested he could help with the nuclear talks with the country. The White House has been approached for comment. Russia's RIA Novosti, state-owned news agency, has said Putin told Trump that the Ukrainians had tried to disrupt the negotiations and that the government in Kiev has essentially turned into a terrorist organisation. No, they're not. They're defending their people. They're attacking military targets. To be a terrorist, you have to attack an actual civilian target. That's you, Vladimir Putin. You're bombing fucking cities. The Ukrainians are incredibly restrained in what they're doing. They've taken these drone attacks and attacked military bases, military fucking jets. This is not an act of terrorism.
They've reduced casualties to an absolute minimum.
Yes, absolutely. The conversation between the two leaders marks the first since Ukraine launched a surprise attack using smuggled drones to strike Russia's air bases on the 1st of June. Magnificent attacks, in my opinion, targeting what it said were nuclear-capable long-range bombers. They are. The Kremlin said later on Wednesday that Trump told Putin that the US was not warned in advance of these attacks. Why, surprisingly, when your president is best friends with the person you're fighting, why are you shocked? Well, why are you shocked for, America?
So you're buddying up next to Russia and you...
Who's at war with Ukraine? Why were you not warned? That should be self-explanatory.
Why would you go... Tell someone that's speaking to your enemy that they're going to do an attack? That's like shooting yourself in the foot. Absolutely.
Last week, Trump appeared to have set a 2-week deadline for Putin, threatening to change how the US is responding to Russia if he believes Putin will still tapping him along on a peace efforts in Ukraine. The comments were one of a string of criticisms remarked by Trump, who earlier said Putin had gone absolutely crazy and was playing with fire when Russia intensified drone and missile attacks on targets in Ukraine, civilian targets and power structure of Ukraine. Trump made no mention of the deadline or his previous remarks in the Wednesday's post on his Truth social platform. On Wednesday, a delegation of Ukrainian officers, including the Deputy Prime Minister, Yulia, I can't pronounce his bloody surname, Surodevich, the Deputy Prime Minister of Ukraine, and Presidential Office Head Andy Yermak, were set to meet the US senators in Washington to discuss arms purchases and efforts to stop the fighting. In a social media post, Yermak said that the delegation planned to discuss defensive support and the situation on the battlefield, sanctions against Russia, and a previously signed recognition investment fund. The post also comes just days after a second round of direct peace talks between the warring sides held in Istanbul ended without any major breakthrough, although the two sides agreed to swap more prisoners of war. You've got to understand that the Ukrainians are fighting an aging Russia. I mean, this has really exposed how Russia does not have a grasp of modern drone warfare and modern technological warfare. They just don't. The idea that Russia will become a sphere of influence, because many people talk about how America wants to withdraw and build these spheres of influence, America having America's area, China having Asia, and Russia having Europe. France could take on Russia right now, in Russia's current state. Poland could take on Russia. We would with any other one power, because our military is actually quite bad nowadays. Navally, we'll do anyone, but we're not talking naval, we're talking ground forces here.
I would say from naval, we're too strong.
Yeah. Navally, we're on par with one of the US fleets. Let's be quite frank about this. But the idea that Russia will be the influence that moves around Europe is absurd. It's absolutely absurd. And this is no attack to the Russian people. They're a noble people, and I keep saying this.
Who turned around and determined that Russia should be the lead power of Europe?
Probably an American think tank.
I don't give a shit. It's us.
The Europeans are going to, the Western Europeans are going to be the leading force when America finally withdraws. This is a reality. Russia can say whatever the fuck she likes. She doesn't have the military right now to fight a drone fleet of fucking Ukrainians. The Ukrainians keep boxing you. They've invaded your territory. They've smacked the living shit out of you with these drone bombs. It's a magnificent level. And to call them a terrorist, Putin, is lazy. Okay, call your enemy what he is, ingenious. He has not attacked civilian targets. Ukraine has valued arguments to attacking them because their own have been attacked.
I see it. To justify the fact of being a terrorist attacks innocent populations in order to cause harm. All they did was release a drone strike to incapacitate a certain strategic advantage that you had. How is that attacking a civilian occupation?
Terrorism is very, very clear. Calling the Ukrainian government a terrorist organisation is propaganda. Everyone in his dog can know that. Even the Russian people should know that. And we do have a few Russian viewers. And I should have said thank you very much. We've now reached 587.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I was thinking. Anyway, my boy Chris has got another subject to cross over.
Yep, lovely. House Lords push back for amendments to the new AI bill. Keir Starmer issued devastating blow by the House Lords as PM backed into a corner. Go into
the House of Lords might not necessarily be in a corner unless his peers in the House of Commons.
Peers in the House of Lords have forced Keir Starmer to accept a major amendment to the new AI bill or risking being defeated on the whole legislation. Lords have been battling for months to impose an amendment to the legalisation that would require greater copyright protections for the creative industries who fear AI scrappers will steal their work without payment or credit. The upper chamber has repeatedly voted in favour of the amendment by Baroness Kidon, a film director who wants to force AI companies to dissolve what material they are using to develop their programs and require them to ask permission from copyright holders in order to use their work. The government has repeatedly rejected the amendment during ping pong, the parliamentary procedure where a bill goes between the Commons and the Lords until one side gives in. This afternoon, the Lords effectively yet again defeated on the government, and Technology Minister Chris Bryant voted by 221 to 116 to once again assist the amendment to the Data Use and Access Bill.
I think this is necessary because the House of Lords is raising the actual bar. Yeah. I have a problem with the government giving carte blanche to these AI companies.
And I say, literally, it's even come...
Because that affects us.
Yeah,
that affects us on our material.
That literally affects anybody which creates any sort of material. The fact that gives the AI people access to it now. It's called copyright for a reason. If you want to use...
The goal involving, just as I thought a necessity because this is a recording, neither myself nor Chris give any AI company permission. This is a blanket statement to use any of our material. If you do, we will be involving lawyers. I have them as family. It costs me next to nothing. I have, and on corporate law, they are the business. They might not be able to hold much on criminal law, but they are literally into commercial shipping.
And when it comes to copyright, this is the people you
exactly.
want.
So I make no illusions about this. Yeah, I do not give any permission to you.
I don't.
No permission for any of our material.
My personal data, my material. You can all stick your head up your ass.
Absolutely not. There is no given permission from us. And I think that's absolutely necessary to be spoken out loud by most content creators. And it costs more effort to do so, but I want to be very, very clear that I give no consent whatsoever for my material to be used.
I think it's a case of fact, since we've done it on YouTube, created our own channel and everything else, it automatically falls under copyright law.
Yeah, but I think this is a very important subject for content creators and content absorbers. Those of you who actually watch our material, be under no illusions,
it's not just
your data can be mined as well.
Also people that produce music and drawings and along that sort of thing, artwork. I say the House of Lords has cornered Keir Starmer's government on the legislation. It means that they are forced to either come up with an alternative proposal that satisfies Lords rebels or risk the entire bill falling. Yesterday, Lib Dem spokesman Victoria Collins said that while the advance of AI should be celebrated, the government must also ensure that the creative work that has gone into it is also valued. Minister Chris Bryant insists that his objection to the bill are not undermining copyright owners' control over their work, and he wants to protect intellectual property. However, he argues the bill was never intended to be about artificial intelligence, intellectual property and copyright. While what we have is a bill that will harness data for economic growth, improving public services such as modern digital government. We want to get to legalisation on the statute book as fast as we possibly can.
No, not if you're not protecting our datable rights. No. categorically not.
The row of the amendment comes after commendation by Sir Elton John, who branded the government losers over their opposition to the proposed legal prosecutions. The singer superstar said ministers would be committing theft if they allowed big tech companies to use art without the permission
of the artists,
of the compensation.
Absolutely,
it is. That's literally. I think Elton John is Sir Elton John. Sorry,
Elton John.
Sir Elton John has raised a very good point.
Absolutely, completely.
That if you don't get permission from the people that created the art, the top of any form, you are committing theft, and therefore comes under the copyright laws, and you'll be held up for prosecution.
Yeah, no, I believe, and these AI companies should be dragged to court, and the government.
It doesn't matter if you're human or AI.
Yeah, rob me and I want my money back.
Because the fact AI only comes from people that create the AI, so those people will be held liable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that fundamentally speaks volumes for all content creators and all financiers of that facility. This is hard work. Me and Chris have sacrificed both financially and physical time, effort, and energy for our podcast to grow to what it is today. And I'm not having that taken away. And I know my boy won't be having that taken away. He's even more vicious with money than I am. I kid you not. We have bled, sweat, and thought through much of what we're creating here, and no one is getting blanket permission. If someone approaches us and makes a request, we will look on that on a case by case. Obviously, if people want our material for data sharing for that, we should be asked. I am at no point giving burdenable position of blanket freedom of information on my material ever, under any circumstances, for any material mining. I think that's necessary to be said.
Yeah.
I think that wraps up quite nicely.
Yeah, it does, yeah. That ends on a nice, lovely note.
I do.
Yeah.
Thank you for staying for podcast 24. We will be back for podcast 25, which will be the last episode of our season 1.
I reckon we should only have 2 topics: one that you essentially research, and me that one essentially research.
Next one we're going to do 2 massive topics.
Yeah.
I think. What do you fancy you're going to look at?
I'm debating on one, but I'm not quite sure how much of an issue it will cause.
I'm going to look. I think I'm going to extensively do some research for our last podcast on where the British spending of defence money is going, the defence increase that we've seen just recently. I think we're going to look at what the shopping list is for the military defence systems and have a discussion about that.
I would say the tax system, but I think that requires a lot longer than half hour.
Yeah. We're going to need long.
I see the other topic I'm considering is feminism.
Back to these old roots. I'm going to get a chainsaw and start some problems.
But a very specific part of feminism, not just going to jab at feminism. Because feminism and the latest online, feminism and the effect of dating in today's world.
I think
that would be about one, yeah.
We don't have grievances with third wave feminism or the suffragettes. I wouldn't say the women who fought for human rights, legal work rights, rights of liberty and that lot, we don't have a grievance with any of what
and as I call the core
message
of feminism
is not
we
a
have
plus
no issue. It's the latest variations that we're currently having.
When you come to online feminism and the toxic behaviour of the man-hating sphere of feminism, and I think we need to actually be quite clear about that. We have a problem with man-haters. They tend to be incredibly toxic.
Yeah, so this is where I'm going to discuss feminism and the toxicity of it with dating, not just in physical presence, but also online dating.
Become Muslim,
as well.
brother. Alhamdulillah. I keep telling you this. I'll find you a nice young 24-year-old Bengali wife. You
already know my thoughts on religion. Thank you very much. Yeah.
I don't talk about it that much.
That's your first warning on trying to impose it on me.
I'm not imposing shit, you know that. I said I'm giving you an invitation. There's a difference.
Yeah, that's imposing. Yeah. That's trying to force your beliefs on me. You know how I feel about that.
No, I'm not. I said it's an invitation. Alhamdulillah. That's all I said. He gets so angry. But to be fair, and I think we need to probably be a bit honest, Chris has had some bad experiences. There have been some evangelical problems in his past. We won't say no more about that.
Good way of putting it.
Yeah, evangelical problems in his past. So yeah, I mean, alhamdulillah, one day maybe Chris will see the light, maybe he won't. I always pray, but he's my ride or die, you know. I've got to look
I'm
out.
the ride or die of the non-religious facts. Yeah.
It's been a pleasure as always. Thank you for coming to our 24th podcast. I am as always John, Sean or Yahya. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
I'm Chris. Have a smashing day.
And I'll see you at the last of our season 25 next week.